What if the real reason you feel tired after eating, or struggle to lose weight, even when you eat healthy, wasn't about calories or age, but something much deeper? According to Dr. Peter Attia, one of the leading experts in longevity and metabolic science in the United States, insulin resistance is one of the most silent yet destructive processes happening in the modern body. It doesn't show up overnight. It builds quietly, year after year, until one day it shows up as fatigue, stubborn belly fat, brain fog, or pre-diabetes. Peter Attia often says that insulin resistance is the root cause of many of the chronic diseases we face today: heart disease, Alzheimer's, even some cancers. But here's the part most people don't realize. It can begin decades before any lab test shows a problem. The good news? It's not permanent. It's not a life sentence. Through simple, science-backed changes in how you eat, move, and recover, you can restore your body's sensitivity to insulin and reclaim your energy. In this video, we'll break down what insulin resistance really is, why it develops, and how to reverse it, using the exact principles Dr. Peter Attia applies with his own patients. Because understanding this hidden process might be the single most powerful step you can take toward living longer and stronger.
To understand insulin resistance, we first need to understand insulin itself. Insulin is a hormone made by your pancreas. Its job is simple: to help move glucose or sugar from your bloodstream into your cells, where it's used as energy. Think of insulin as a key and your cells as doors. Every time you eat, your body releases insulin to open those doors and let glucose in. But here's where things start to go wrong. When you eat too often, especially foods rich in sugar or refined carbohydrates, your body keeps releasing insulin over and over again. Eventually, the doors stop responding. They become resistant to the key. So now your body has two problems: too much glucose in the blood and too much insulin trying to fix it. Dr. Peter Attia often explains it this way: insulin resistance isn't about having too little insulin. It's about having too much for too long. And that chronic exposure leads to inflammation, weight gain, and eventually the diseases we fear most, from heart disease to type 2 diabetes. What's even more concerning is that this process can begin years before your blood sugar ever looks abnormal on a lab test. In other words, insulin resistance starts quietly, long before you feel sick. But understanding this process is the first step toward reversing it. Because once you know how insulin works, you can begin to make small, intentional changes that bring your metabolism back to balance. The scary part about insulin resistance is that most people have no idea it's happening. There's no pain, no sudden symptom that sends you to the doctor. It creeps in slowly, hidden behind everyday feelings that most of us simply accept as getting older. You feel tired after meals. You wake up hungry even though you ate late the night before. You start gaining weight, especially around your waist, even if your diet hasn't changed. Or you notice your focus slipping, like your mind is just a bit foggier than it used to be. These are the early whispers of insulin resistance. Dr. Peter Attia often says that by the time your blood sugar levels are elevated, the damage has already been building for years. The cells in your muscles, liver, and fat have been struggling to respond to insulin, and your pancreas has been overworking to keep up. That's why Attia insists on testing insulin levels directly, not just glucose, because glucose is often the last thing to change. What makes this condition so dangerous isn't just how common it is, it's how easily it's ignored. Millions of people are walking around thinking they have low energy, slow metabolism, or aging muscles, when in reality, it's their cells begging for balance. But here's the empowering part. Once you recognize these signs, you can intervene early, long before the problem becomes irreversible. If you really want to know whether you're insulin resistant, you can't just look at your blood sugar. Dr. Peter Attia is very clear about this. By the time your glucose levels rise, the problem has already been present for years. So how do you detect it early? The first step is to measure your fasting insulin, not just your fasting glucose. A healthy body keeps insulin low and stable. When insulin is high, even if your glucose looks normal, it means your cells are struggling to respond. One of the best tools Attia recommends is something called the HOMA-IR score. It's a simple calculation that combines fasting glucose and fasting insulin to estimate how resistant your body is. Another easy clue comes from your lipid profile, the triglyceride to HDL ratio. A high number suggests poor metabolic flexibility, a sign that your body isn't handling carbohydrates efficiently. And then there's the mirror test, the one you don't need a lab for. If you're gaining fat around your midsection, if your energy crashes after meals, or if you can't go more than a few hours without eating, those are signs your insulin might be working overtime. Dr. Attia calls awareness the first lever of longevity. Because once you see the data, once you truly know what's happening inside your body, you can start to take control. Measuring doesn't just give you numbers, it gives you direction. It tells you exactly where to start. When most people hear the phrase, fix your insulin resistance, they immediately think of cutting out all carbs or going on another strict diet. But that's not what Dr. Peter Attia teaches. His approach is about metabolic control, not deprivation. It's not about avoiding food, it's about changing how and when you eat so your body can finally rest from insulin overload. Let's start with the basics. Every time you eat, your pancreas releases insulin. The more frequently you eat, especially sugary foods or processed snacks, the higher your insulin stays. Attia often says, the key to improving insulin sensitivity is giving insulin a break. That means spacing your meals, limiting refined carbs, and focusing on foods that keep insulin low but energy stable, like protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Think eggs instead of cereal for breakfast, grilled salmon and vegetables instead of pasta for dinner. And if you can, create longer windows between meals so your body learns to use stored energy again. In one of his clinical cases, Dr. Attia explains how simply reducing snacking and shifting meal timing led to dramatic changes. Lower fasting insulin, better energy, and improved mental clarity in just a few weeks. The goal isn't to starve yourself, it's to train your metabolism to switch smoothly between burning glucose and burning fat, a process known as metabolic flexibility. When that happens, your cells start listening to insulin again. Hunger stabilizes, cravings fade, and your energy stops depending on the next meal. Nutrition isn't punishment, it's leverage. When you use it wisely, food becomes the medicine that restores balance from the inside out. If there's one tool that can improve insulin sensitivity faster than any diet, it's exercise. Dr. Peter Attia calls physical activity the ultimate insulin sensitizer. Why? Because your muscles are like metabolic engines, and the more you use them, the better they respond to insulin. You see, when your muscles contract, they pull glucose out of the bloodstream without needing insulin at all. That means every time you move, every walk, every lift, every stretch, you're teaching your body to manage sugar more efficiently. Attia often explains that one of the biggest mistakes people make is separating longevity training from health training. He believes they're the same thing. Strength training, in particular, plays a critical role. After the age of 40, we lose muscle mass naturally, a process called sarcopenia. And since muscle is the body's main site for glucose disposal, less muscle means higher insulin resistance. Building and maintaining muscle reverses that process. It restores metabolic flexibility and stabilizes blood sugar, even at rest. But it doesn't have to mean heavy lifting or gym marathons. Simple, consistent movement works wonders. A 30-minute walk after meals can significantly reduce post-meal glucose spikes. Short resistance sessions, 2 or 3 times a week, improve insulin sensitivity in as little as a month. Peter Attia calls it earning your carbs, not by punishment, but by giving your body a reason to use the fuel you eat. Because exercise isn't just about burning calories, it's about retraining your cells to listen again. Movement, in every form, is the message your metabolism has been waiting for. You can eat well and exercise every day, but if you don't manage your sleep and stress, your insulin will still suffer. Dr. Peter Attia often calls these the invisible disruptors of metabolic health, because most people underestimate how much they matter. Let's start with sleep. Just one night of poor rest can raise insulin resistance by up to 30% the next day.
That's because lack of sleep increases cortisol, your body's main stress hormone, which tells your liver to release more glucose. Now combine that with chronic stress and your body ends up living in constant survival mode. Your heart rate stays high, your blood sugar stays elevated, and insulin keeps firing, trying to fix a problem that's really emotional, not nutritional. Attia emphasizes that you can't out-train or out-eat bad sleep. Recovery is just as essential as movement or nutrition. Here's what he recommends. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of consistent sleep each night. Avoid eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. That gives insulin a break overnight. Practice slow breathing or meditation to lower cortisol and improve glucose control. One of his patients, a 62-year-old man, saw his fasting insulin drop by 40%, not from a diet change, but simply by fixing his bedtime routine and reducing late-night snacking. Because when you rest deeply, your cells repair. And when your body feels safe, insulin sensitivity naturally returns. Sometimes the best way to heal your metabolism is to slow down.
The most powerful message Dr. Peter Attia shares about insulin resistance is this. It's not your destiny. It's a signal. A signal that your body is asking for balance, for rest, and for consistency. The truth is, insulin resistance can be reversed. Not by magic, not overnight, but through the small, steady changes you make every single day. When you eat with purpose, move your body, sleep deeply, and manage your stress, you're literally retraining your metabolism. Your cells begin to respond again. Energy returns. Cravings fade. The weight you thought was impossible to lose starts to shift naturally. Dr. Attia often reminds his patients that longevity isn't about adding years to your life. It's about adding life to your years. Imagine waking up without that afternoon crash, walking after dinner without feeling tired, thinking clearly, sleeping deeply, and knowing that your choices are buying you more healthy time. That's the reward of restoring insulin sensitivity. More vitality, more clarity, and more freedom. So start small. Maybe it's replacing one snack with a walk. Maybe it's turning off your screens an hour before bed. Because the path to longevity isn't built in a week. It's built in the quiet, consistent moments when you choose health over habit. And that choice starts today.